Morning, everybody. Welcome to episode 11 of Your Day with David. This morning, I have my good friend Katie Alexander on the show
Hello.
today. And, I say good friend, but it's interesting. Katie, I think there's a lot of different types of friends out there. There's friends, there's good friends, and then there's friends that you have that turn into good friends. And I don't think it was and maybe this is wrong, maybe you think differently, but I don't think that you and I were probably very good friends until probably more
Right.
recently. I think we um were acquaintances, right? We met
Mhm.
freshman year of college. Um and then it wasn't until doing this podcast and then my journey of reconnecting with people uh that I got reconnected to you. And then
Yeah.
but that jump from being a friend to a good friend, it's a little bit reciprocal, right? Where
Mhm.
you we I made a trip back up to Des Moines and I visited you, and we kind of just talked about you opened up, and then so I did as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there's always that joke of just like shared trauma, I guess,
Mhm.
right? And that's how people that's how people actually get along. It's like, oh, this person's been through the ringer a little bit, and that makes it more comfortable to talk about my experience.
Yeah.
And so that's what I want to do today. I think Katie has an interesting story, and we talked about it a lot when
Mhm.
we caught up, and I do want to talk about that a little bit. Um, but again, I met Katie freshman year of college. We did not hang out too much. I mean,
Acquaintances. We saw each
yeah,
other, but yeah, I didn't like we'd see each other like in passing, but we didn't like actively hang out or anything like that. But
yeah, because we
yeah, I
had
think
mutual friends. We had the same
yeah.
friend group, but then Katie had other friend groups as well that she preferred to spend her time with, I
Yeah,
guess.
that's exactly what it was. I'm
Fair.
like, I just want to avoid this person as much as
Yeah,
possible.
just for the record, I wanted to spend time hanging out with Katie, but then she was just like, "Nah, screw you guys." But and I guess uh, a little background: you're not, or let me see if I'm thinking this right. Are you from Iowa?
No, I grew up on the main streets of South Side of Chicago, actually.
Mm,
And
born and
then,
raised.
yeah, for sure. And then, yeah, I ended up going to Iowa State for college. And then I just loved it so much that I just decided to kind of stay out here and, make my roots. But yeah, not originally from Iowa. I actually hadn't even been to Iowa before going to
So then,
Iowa
why
State.
Iowa?
Well, I think originally it was like looking at schools. Iowa just kind of worked best with like what I wanted to do originally, and also, of course, school prices. You're looking at like
Yeah.
Iowa actually was pretty inexpensive compared to some of the other schools, like looking at Michigan and even other schools in Illinois. But yeah, I ended up coming out to Iowa and visiting the campus. And fun fact, it was the only college that I ended up even applying for because I visited and I'm like, nope, this is it. And then with Iowa State, I don't know if you had the same experience, but I applied and I literally got you've been accepted like the next day. That's like,
Oh,
all right, I guess
um,
that's what we're doing.
I don't think that
Yeah.
was my experience. I'm trying to think. I think I was probably um, one of the people though who your parents were like, you need to apply as soon as application, like opening day
Yeah.
it was, and so like I think it was this thing where like that was when so many people applied all at once, and then so you just have to wait a little while.
Yeah. I was the
Um,
first generation, like I was like the first person in my family to go to college.
oh,
So
I didn't know
um
that.
yeah, so pretty much like I when doing college stuff, my parents like they were super supportive. They're like, "Yeah, like we want to see you go to college. We want to do all that." But I feel like I was kind of just um going with the flow a little bit on it. I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't really know what I'm doing, but like I think I'm figuring this whole thing out.
I
But
think I'm doing it.
yeah, but also back in high school I was like I wouldn't say I was lazy, but I really just didn't want to have to do all of the college applications. So I think I was
Mm,
just like, this
truth
one's
comes out.
yeah, right. No, but yeah, Iowa State was just it was like easy application. I love the campus. I loved it here, and no, I fell in love with it. Like honestly, I when I like the campus, Iowa State's campus is awesome, and all the people were really awesome. And I where I grew up was it was pretty busy. I mean, it definitely wasn't like I didn't grow up in the city. I grew up probably, I don't know, like 25 minutes southwest of the city. But like it's a busy area, and that's kind of why I loved Iowa State and Des Moines so much, is because it was that perfect balance of there's enough going on to where I feel like there's always stuff to do, but it wasn't super hectic like Chicago can be. So I think that's kind of why I ended up here, and it's just easy to get around. And like I said, there's always like plenty of stuff to do. So I
Yeah.
think
Did
that's
you
kind
ever
of
wish that you applied at other places? Now, like looking back, like, ooh, could I have like looked at this place or this school?
I think the only reason like I may have thought that is because I actually went to Iowa State originally for the meteorology program. And that's pretty limited. Like school, not very many schools offer it. And I think, once I started paying those student loans, that out of state tuition, like, dang, I could have gone to like Western Illinois or something and pay that sweet, sweet in state tuition.
Yeah.
Um, I think, at the end of the day, I'm really happy I went there. I wouldn't really have it any other way. College was difficult for different reasons, but at the end of the day, it's an experience that, um, I would never take back, because I feel like it helped me grow so much as a person, and meet so many people. And, it was just a really great time, and also like a really dark time in my life. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think I wouldn't really have it another way.
Yeah. I know that and you mentioned dark times. I know one of the things that I struggled with when you go to college is when you're growing up, you're like everyone makes you feel say special, right? Like
Hmm.
you're smart, you're talented, all this other stuff. And
Yeah.
you go to this school and then you realize that once again, you're average, right?
Yeah.
If you're
Oh
lucky,
yeah.
you're average, right? And if you're wasted, you're you're below average, which a lot of, that's the freshman college experience anyway.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was, something that I kind of had to come to terms with was, okay, there's a thousand other Davids on this campus,
Hmm.
right? And so I got to bust my ass. But probably for you, your experience might have been a little bit different than if you think about first generation going to college, right? Was there kind of like an expectation or some kind of pressure you felt to like appease or I think everyone wants to make their parents proud at the end of the day, but how
Yeah.
did that?
And surprisingly, I feel like it was more of a pressure on myself than like my family. My family were always really good at being supportive. My mom wanted to see me exceed for sure, but at the same time, it wasn't like I'm going to check your grades to see how you're doing. Like, you better be doing well. It was never like that. It was more just, it was like my own pressures that I put on myself. But yeah, you mentioned, um, like going from thinking that you're this extraordinary, gifted kid being told like you're doing really well. That's definitely like where college like put me right in my place. Is in school, I always had good grades. I was always like doing the right thing. I worked really hard. And then like come college, I just was not doing well. Like I
Mm,
especially once I first started, um, that first year, like I was really in a rough spot. And I think that took a toll on my mental health. Is I'm like, I feel like I'm working so hard, and everything's so new and so overwhelming. And that's the other thing too, I don't think a lot of kids realize when they go to college, is like, I think like you're gonna have to choose a profession, and like you're gonna have to figure things out, but that pressure to like decide the rest of your life, that makes you think like, okay, whatever I decide now is going to impact my entire life. So I'm going to have to make this decision at 18,
yeah.
just coming out of high school. Like, it it's it can be really overwhelming. And while college, like, super fun, it's a really great time. That between that pressure to like figure out what I wanted to do the rest of my life, and I always had a passion for meteorology. I was always like a weird weather nerd, and I still to this day like would consider it almost like a hobby.
Did you watch
Um
Storm Chasers and stuff like that?
yeah, yeah. I had an autographed calendar from one of my favorite storm chasers that I literally still like watch his stuff to this day.
Mm.
But yeah, I so it was like I had this passion, but I was doing terrible in all my classes. Um like
Rough.
it's a lot of yeah, it's a lot of it was a lot of math and science. And as much as I love like meteorology, math has never I've been good at science, but math has never been my strong suit. And I think
Mm.
when I was doing badly in my classes and I realized I'm like, I don't think I can do this and maintain, an average to stay in school. That's kind of when I'm like, okay, so my passion that I had for this one thing is now being, burned. Just like I
Mhm.
gotta, all right, now you have to pick something else. And in my brain, I'm like, okay, well, I guess I have these other interests and things I can do. But yeah, I mean, that really took a toll on me, like not doing well in my classes and feeling like I didn't know what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I also like didn't want to do anything for the rest of my life. Like
Yeah.
that was the other thing too, is I was like, I feel like I was going down a path where I had to choose something that I didn't want to do. And that was that was a real bummer.
Yeah.
Real bummer.
I mean, and again, do we want to kind of go into as well? And I should just ask, that was that freshman year when it was that second semester when things
Mhm.
really started to go downhill from you from a mental standpoint,
Yeah. Yeah.
and what led to that?
Right. Yeah, no, yeah, my freshman year um just like really took a toll on my mental health, between the things that I just talked about and also just socially. It's so different. I in high school I was kind of just like cruising through. I'm like, oh, I didn't need to have like a boyfriend or anything like that. I'm like, I'm just having a good time with my friends. And then, in college, it was, I think what really ultimately took a toll on my mental health was like never feeling like I was good enough.
Mm.
And that came from um, you know, pressures in school, pressures again to pick something for myself, realizing that, I'm not this gifted kid that like I always thought I was. And then like of course from a like social perspective, um, I it was like honestly just like rejection after rejection of like, nobody I would nobody goes to college, especially their freshman year, being like, I want a girlfriend. I'm going to settle down. It's going to
Yeah.
be great. Like, no one, especially that first year, is thinking that. And, I didn't really want that either, but it was meeting guys and just kind of like having my heart broken, like one after
Constantly.
another.
Yeah.
Yeah, like within a couple weeks, just like constantly having my heart broken. And um just all of those things like really ended up just taking a toll on me. And I think that was when I really went to a dark place. I mean, I struggled with um anxiety and definitely depression. um I yeah, I mean, I've never experienced anything like that. It was it was a really like it was a really upsetting time. And the thing that really stinks looking back is I try to look back fondly because I'm like, I know I was having fun. Like I was having a lot of fun meeting people. But I just remember a lot of days waking up and just feeling like this absolute dread.
Hmm.
Um, just trying to get through day to day. And, you know, comedians talk about it a lot where it's like oh, well, you put on a happy face, and I was going out, and I was actively socializing and like actively having a really fun time, but I just remember this like deep, like heavy weight just on me, like every single day.
When the
And
music stops, the lights are down, you just go home and you're like, I'm back. I'm right back
yeah,
into it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, no, completely. And I think that's why I wanted to go out so much, is because I just wanted a break from whatever I was feeling. You know, during that time, I was trying anything to get out of it, really. And I think I was mentioning it to people like in passing, and I mentioned it to my mom, but I don't think any of us, including myself, like realized how bad it was until um, the moment where I kind of just like was
Yeah.
done. And um, yeah, I just remember specifically there was just one night, and I remember I'd went out, and um, it was again just one of those like heartbreak moments, and I was already dealing with like clearly not doing well in school. You know, stuff going on with family back home, and like other things, and just this constant feeling of just rejection and feeling like I wasn't good enough. And I remember just something, again, had my heart broken. And I remember walking home that night, and it was by far like the scariest, looking back on it, like the scariest,
Yeah.
weirdest moment, because I remember like my mind just went blank. It's almost like whatever personal, like consciousness I had left was just gone. And I walked home, and yeah, I shut off mentally and emotionally. I was like emotionally I was gone. It's not even like I could cry. I'm like, nope, I
Yeah.
just
What
don't
does
care
crying
anymore.
do, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so I had gone back to my dorm, and I decided that kind of, well, it's good. I was done with the whole life thing.
Yeah.
And I had taken some things, and um luckily some friends within the dorm had noticed like that I was kind of going out of consciousness. And I had been taken into the hospital, and the last thing I remember is just like the paramedics being there, showing up to come and get me, to take me to the hospital. And yeah, it was really, it was a tough time. And I think the worst part of it was too is um so I had woken up in the hospital, and I remember sitting there, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and then I went back to sleep. But when I woke up the next day, um, they said, okay, well, we're going to need you to call your parents. And I was like, okay, kind of was hoping you guys had done that, but I guess I will call them and tell them. So I remember like calling my mom and having to say, like, Mom, I need to tell you, first of all, I'm okay, but I am in the hospital. And telling her, and it feels so rough to say, but I
Yeah.
said to her, I'm like, Mom, I tried to kill myself last night. And just her breaking down. And I wasn't with her at the time, obviously, but we had talked about it later in my life. And she, and this is kind of dark, but she's like, yeah, I didn't know what to do. She said, I just went and I laid in your bed, and I just cried for hours and hours. And I think that was something that you don't realize in the moment, but it really obviously takes an emotional toll on the people who care about you. And yeah, it was just a really dark time. And I struggled with depression for, well, I still struggle with depression.
Yeah.
Not right at this moment, but even the next year, it was rough. And um, it was a little better, but still like in a pretty rough place. And then just on and off um, throughout my life up to this point. But you know what? I think one of the good things, or the silver linings, I should say, is that depression is horrendous to deal with, but it does, as cliche as this sounds, help you to realize like when things are good. Like I'm in a really amazing place right now, and there's days when I literally wake up and I just go, I'm so happy. Like I'm in such a good place, and it it helps you truly realize like, wow, I can like breathe. I'm experiencing just like being happy and enjoying my life. Um so yeah, it was a rough time for sure. But I got past it, and I I just went on to, try to get to a good place. And like I said, I still struggled with it on and off, but um, medication, of course, helped. Um, and, I think that ultimately it comes down to depression is both um, like your brain chemistry. Obviously, you can't control unless you're medicated, but you can't control like how your brain works. I mean, some people are just prone to depression and anxiety, and it definitely runs in my family. I'm not the only one who struggles with it. But I think there's things that I try to do to keep myself from returning to that same dark place.
Mm.
Um, I definitely like to always have something to look forward to, whether that just be like an event, a trip, something within your life. Just identify that as a goal, and that helps you kind of keep pushing forward. Um, and I do that to this day. Like if I don't have anything going on, I'm like I have to find something. I have to find
Yeah.
something like to look forward to in the next couple months, so that I keep going. Um,
Yeah.
and keeping busy too, really. I mean, of course, if you're really depressed, it's hard. It's very hard to get up and do anything. But finding something that you like to do and that you enjoy doing, it could be anything. I mean, again, it's everyone's different,
Yeah.
uh but yeah, you kind of just have to find your strive, right?
Hmm.
Find that thing that helps you keep going. And again, as cliches that's the sounds, I those dark times are mostly temporary. um of course, depression can be something you struggle with your whole life, but it is important to remember that whatever you're feeling, um, will pass eventually. And I think it's hard when you are dealing with depression to think about the future because it's exhausting, but it'll
Yeah.
pass. It'll pass at some point. I mean, I got through it. It took years,
Do you still
but
get little episodes every now and then?
oh yeah, I still do. I would not say I've gotten to that same level since college. Like that was truly like the
Yeah.
darkest and most depressed I've ever been. But yeah, I definitely struggle with it. Um I think within this past year is probably like the best I've been mental health
Mm.
wise. But yeah, I definitely go through waves and ebbs and flows. Especially winter. I know a lot of people struggle with seasonal depression, and that's a toughie. That's a toughie to overcome. But yeah, I think just finding that thing to kind of help you push through, and just remembering that your feelings will pass eventually. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah,
think,
it was a tough time.
yeah, I know that you mentioned kind of like going numb and then
Mhm.
your mom just going and crying in your bed kind of thing. It's, you know, like you said, we don't really think about that. I think when we get into kind of that state, because I've had moments, I didn't get as that far, but I've gotten close. I mean, I'll be pretty honest. There was a time growing up, and I can't remember what caused it. I still don't know. Um, but I grew up in small town Iowa. We all hunt and fish and all that other good
Mhm.
stuff. And I mean, there was a time I got so bad. I mean, I put my 12 gauge shotgun in my mouth,
Mhm.
and I didn't. I just kind of sat there. And I think the reason why I don't even know if I've ever told the story. Like the reason why I didn't was my younger brother um, essentially saw me um, just I took my gun and I just walked outside and just sat down on like this hill by our house, and obviously him very concerned
Mhm.
um, for my well-being, and yeah, that stopped that. But um, as far as like for me, you mentioned how to kind of stay away from those kind of episodes of staying busy, right?
Mhm.
And how a lot of people like they don't want to do anything, and uh, I was kind of not the opposite, but like I knew what would happen if I wasn't busy. I knew what would happen if I didn't, like you said, have something to look forward to.
Mhm.
Um, and so like to this day, like my schedule is always packed. I'm always busy. I'm always exhausted from it. But I have a
Mhm.
fear. Like I'm genuinely afraid of like, okay, if I give myself a day to relax and not do anything, like, is that feeling going to creep back in?
Mhm.
Is
You
it,
get stuck with your thoughts for a day and you're like, "Nope, I
yeah,
can't
just one,
I can't listen to my brain today. We're gonna keep busy."
yeah. And because of that, I never relax. I never can, at least the way that I want to. And I also get this feels like, man, if I'm not doing anything, then I'm just this lazy piece of garbage, right? Like, why am I
Mhm.
wasting time? We only have so much time on this way. And I've been very fortunate though. You included with through all of this that old friends, new friends, reconnecting, and I've been pretty open with some of the people that I've met recently about the stuff I'm going through, and it's been very like one humbling and uplifting to just one realize again that there's so many people that have gone through what you and I experience, and everyone feels it differently. Everyone
Mhm.
expresses it differently, heals differently. Uh, but they can all say that they've been there. And like you said, it does pass that feeling. And it doesn't help you as well. I'll just kind of tangent off into the funny story here. Um, there was a short time where Katie and I had another class together
Oh
after
god.
after freshman year. I'll probably
Yeah.
apologize to her for the rest of my life, but it was econ, right?
Yeah.
Was that
It was econ.
microeconomics?
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, one of my faves.
hmm And I guess I would have that been sophomore year, or were we already into junior year at that point?
Yeah, I think we were in junior year by then, actually.
Okay. And so at this point, I probably hadn't even seen Katie in 2 years between
Mhm.
the end of freshman year to whatever part of junior year this was. And um, I think I just saw her in class one day. I was like, Katie, and then we would sit next to each other and just
What's up, David? How you doing?
yeah, yeah. And there was many a time where Katie would well, not show up for class.
It's true.
And I don't know if there's another way to say it. Let's just say she was busy, right? But no, there's a lot of people, of course, that just would rather not do, would rather do anything besides go to microeconomics. And I
Yeah.
was one of them, but I was there. But, and I don't know why it bothered me. I do know why it bothered me because I just had this like, um, I don't know. I was always this guy that's like, oh, I want all my friends to succeed and everyone should work hard and blah blah blah. You're not allowed to mess up. All this stuff that I was projecting onto like everybody else. And
But warranted. I mean, to be fair, it well,
and
the
so
fact
this
that
is
I
what I
wasn't
said.
showing up.
This is what I said, and this is why I apologize. Is Katie one day messaged me and she was like, "Hey, did we have a pop quiz or whatever this
Yeah.
week or this lecture?" Because he would
It was
do
like a
that like
Friday.
yeah, and he would do that. That professor would do that maybe once a week,
Yeah, I
something
think
like
that was the
that.
whole thing is that there was always one once a week, but you never knew if it was going to be, I think, Monday, Wednesday, or Friday.
Yeah, what a dick. And so she texted me like, "Did we have a pop quiz?" And then I said to her, Katie, I'm not your mom. I'm your
Uh-huh.
friend. Get to class. Something along
Again,
those lines. Yeah.
totally warranted.
And it wasn't warranted. You can forgive me if you want. But I think I was always that kid growing up that was like gave the girls all the answers to their homework and stuff like that, being the Asian kid that knew too much and like actually cared about school. And I was just like, God, this shit is repeating in college again too with my good friend Katie. And I'm like, all right, Katie, get to class,
Yeah.
and um, it's funny because I had entirely forgotten about that moment, but you didn't. You said that it stuck with you, and then that's why I want to apologize because that meant what I said to you meant a lot more to you than it did to me. It also showed I didn't care very much how I was treating you. So I apologize.
No, you're
Um,
you're totally fine. I mean, um, yeah, I think from like my perspective with that, I mean, no, I totally I should have been going. Like that's another one of my regrets. Like back in college is I wish that I would have participated more. Like I think there was so much more that I could have learned had I been, a better student. Um, but that was the other thing too, is I felt so tired all the time between I was working at Panera at that time, and people are superheroes, by the way, can work like full time jobs and go to college and go to all their classes and stuff. I aspired to be one of those people. I was
I'm
just
not
working a
one of
part
those
time
people.
job. I wish I was one of those people, but no, I was just working a part time job, and I was still kind of just struggling with my own anxiety, my own depression, just trying to get myself to like get up and do stuff. Um, and I felt exhausted all the time, like trying to get myself up to go out and do anything besides just like lay down and sleep was tough. um so David, that's where you came in, where I was
Oh
just like,
no,
hey, I can't. Well, I'm like, I think it was just a Friday where I'm just like, man, I don't want to do anything today. I just want to lay in bed. I probably worked like a close the night before, and I'm like, I just want to lay in bed today. I don't want to do anything. And I probably was just like, you know what? If we already had the pop quiz this week, then like I obviously had missed it, but I was just like, okay, if we didn't have the quiz this week, I will go into class. I will take this, or I will take it. Like it's gonna be great. And then that's where that's where you said that. And in that moment, I think I also just like I feel so guilty about things. Like when if someone like calls me out, I will sit there and like feel so guilty for so long. And I think that was just one of those moments. But like I think like you apologizing, I mean, that's great. But again, I still to this day is like, no, that's totally warranted. I'd be like, I'm going, if I were you, I'd be like, I'm going to class. Like, I'm putting in the effort, and you want to like try to get me to like help you, even though you can't even show up to class. Be like, no, get out of here. Like, the fact that you were even helping me up to that point was great. But yeah, I appreciate you apologizing. But again, I think that you and I see it differently from a sense that like I don't think you need to apologize like whatsoever. I think it was
yeah,
totally warranted. But yeah, just from my perspective, that's again just where a lot of that like mental health was just coming in, is I just couldn't get myself to like go up and do the things that I needed to do.
yeah. Are there any other um, people from, say, that freshman group that we had that you still talk to, connect with? I know one, but uh, anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't talk to them as much actually. I think that's kind of the funny thing about college, is that you meet people, and in that moment, they're a really important part of your life. But then of course, like after college, you know, everyone I think moves on, and a lot of people move away. And I think another big part of that too is in college, like you are meeting people within proximity of you for the most part. I mean, you can meet people through interests and things like that, but for the most part, you're really meeting people through proximity. But as you kind of find yourself through college and just growing up and becoming an adult, you realize that, hey, these people were really great, but maybe we weren't, the same people. And I think
Hmm.
that was kind of like my struggle with freshman years, that I think everyone was really great, but a lot of us had grown up differently. A lot of us had different interests, different personalities, and I think like all those people will always be like a special part of my life. But I think as I grew up and met different people, I just ended up clicking with them a little bit better. Just again from like a personality perspective, I've met some really great people over the past 5 years, even after college, that have become a really important part of my life that will probably be there for the rest of my life. But I think again, like, you are truly finding yourself during that time. So um and so is
Yeah.
everyone else too. So not as close, but again, there'll always be like that special part of me. And a lot of them really helped me through that dark time and were
Yeah.
there to support me. So I'm always going to be grateful for that.
Yeah. And it's not like, we're always cheering for them on the sidelines too now.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
we might not get a chance to talk to them or see them, but I think we always wish them well and that everything's going as well as can be for them. And I think that's something that I've more recently kind of had to come to terms with in a more profound way, is that feeling of you. There are some people in your life that are meant to be there for that part of your life,
Hmm.
and maybe not so much after. And doesn't mean you ever regret like meeting that person. Doesn't mean that you wish you hadn't. But it just means that, well, one, life doesn't stop, right? And I joked around with a lot of people, saying like, man, I just remember freshman year of college and just how I wish I could go back to that. Because as far as like responsibilities go and stress and life, like there was no responsibilities, and
Hmm.
the worst thing that I had to worry about was getting up for my 8 a.m. class. And you guys might be able to hear Xena in the background crying or whimpering because she wants to be let in. But um, do you remember Crossed?
Yeah.
Yeah, our friend Crossed. For perspective on like, it can always be worse as far as like how much pressure you put on yourself to be good in school. I remember that I don't know if it was chemistry. I don't know if it was physics. I don't know what class it was, but in engineering we had to take those. And I remember Cross got a B plus on one of his quizzes, and he he was sad. I remember hanging out with him and his roommate Igor, and I was like, Cross, what's up, man? He's like, dude, I got a B plus on my quiz, and he's like, I just want to make my parents proud, man, and I'm getting B
um,
pluses. And because he was a foreign exchange, like an international student from China, and you want to talk about like out of state tuition. But
right.
um, when I talk about pressure and stress, and your parents send you to an entire different country
Hmm.
to do well, right? And here he is, and by all stretches of imagination, Cross was a very smart kid guy, um, which is why he would help me with physics and chemistry. I think he even went on to be like a TA in chemistry in one semester or whatnot. But um, he's someone that I probably should reach out to and just see how he's doing as well.
Yeah.
Um, uh,
And I mean, that goes to show you too, is, you know, it's important that you remember. And I think that's kind of how like we reconnected too, is it's important to remember that you all of the feelings that you have are valid. Um, but at the same time, you never know what someone else is going through, and you never know like what their stress looks like. Um, and I think even another thing too to remember is that just because you may have it difficult in certain things, if someone's going through something, you may look at that and be like, whatever, like that's nothing compared to, what I'm going through. But you really can't look at it like that because their feelings are very much valid to them, you
Yeah.
know, um, and what they're going through, it if it might be something that you see as, oh, again, it's whatever, but it's very valid, and it could be really taking a toll on their mental health, um, and I think that that's something that even with myself, I'll catch myself on every now and then. If somebody's venting to me, I'll in my head, I'll just kind of be like, oh, that's whatever. But
Yeah.
you can't do that. You really, I think that's an important part of empathy and sympathy. Um, it's like that meme on TikTok. I'm an empath and I can sense that you're like struggling or whatever. But but yeah, I think it is genuinely important to remember that you can't compare your struggles to someone else. You can definitely um, relate to someone in their struggles, but you never know how something's truly affecting someone.
Yeah. I think, there are, speaking of like TikToks and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I remember this one that I saw. I more follow like motivational TikToks and stuff like that. Although I do
Mine's
have
just an absolute mess of a
hush
feed,
hush.
but gone.
And one of them talks about like essentially like tough times make tough people, and then um, tough people make easy times, and then easy times make um, essentially weak people, right? So basically, like saying like it's a cycle of the only way to become a stronger person is to go through tough times, and then
Hmm.
um, it's like kind of like generational thing about like people who work their butt off to become very very successful, then their kids are kind of like pampered, if you will, right? And they have an easy life, and then because of their easy life, their kids are going to go through tough times because they aren't. Anyway, what I'm getting to is like I had a good life growing up, pretty much, what I could have asked for, I could have gotten, kind of thing. There are a lot of times I asked for something I didn't get it though, because my parents, knew the value of not spoiling your kids. But I do think that because of that, there is a sense of um, like maybe like I don't want you not entitlement, um, and not saying that I was like pampered, but like I didn't get a chance to like struggle at an early age, I guess. And then what happens is I think a lot of us then when we start struggling is then when we get into like adulthood, right? And then you're here and you're like on your own and you're like, God, like, what do I do? Like, what do I do? And, like last week's episode, or sorry, not last week's, well, actually, yeah, it will be last week's episode once this drops. Um, my most recent episode will be with my mentor, a guy named Andy Bukta, and he kind of helped me as far as like career path goes. But while he did help me with that regard, he's definitely more like a life coach to me about like and really the synopsis of last week's episode is just going to be like you have to raise your hand, you have to ask questions. um I think we all struggle so hard because we're trying to solve our problems without an answer, and then we
Hmm.
don't go to the people that have answers. And that could stem into a lot of things. If it's work related, there's people at work that we should be asking. But also like if it's mental health related, you you have to ask the professionals, right? You have to,
Oh yeah.
see a therapist and stuff like that, like I do. Um, and um, Same thing with like meeting new people or socializing and networking, things of that nature. Just you have to be genuinely curious or genuinely want to like find the answer, but fully
Hmm.
understanding that me included, like I don't have all the answers, and that's tough too. Um, I think a lot of people, probably like myself, find it hard to get out of their comfort zone to ask people for help.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know
Pretty,
if you struggled with like relying on other people or not, but
yeah, I think another like semi switch to like a dark topic, but yeah, when my dad passed away about 3 years ago, and that was something I could never, you can never prepare yourself for that, right? And I at that point really hadn't known anybody who had gone through the same thing that I'd really talked to them about it. And I remember, once after he passed, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna let myself grieve, and then I'm gonna get through this, and it's gonna be fine. And I remember maybe a couple months after, and I was just really withdrawing from the world. I wasn't able to keep up with friends socially. I wasn't able to, I wasn't able to focus on anything besides my own grief. And I think that's finally when I'm like, all right, I gotta go see someone. I'm like, this isn't
mhm,
okay. Like I'm clearly my my own grieving process was not working, right?
mm,
um so that's when I was like, okay, I got to see a grief therapist. I don't know how to process this. This is too much for me. I can't do this. um so yeah, that's when I went to see a grief therapist, and I think truly that was one of the smartest things I've ever done in my life, because I don't think, without seeing her, I don't think that I would have been able to process it and get to the point of comfort, if that's the word I want to use, with my dad's passing. Um, she really helped me, um, first of all, understand. Like sometimes I think even the biggest thing with grief or with whatever you're going through is realizing that what you're feeling, it isn't, while it may be unique to your situation, um, it's it's not just you. Like a lot of things that you're feeling, other people are feeling the exact same thing. And that was helpful too with grief. As I was telling her, I'm like, I remember just saying, I can't put any effort into my relationship with my friends right now or anything. I'm like, I don't have any capacity to focus on them. And I wanted to so bad because I felt bad. I'm like, I don't want to just be caught up in what I'm going through. I still want to be there for my friends and everyone else. And she said, it's okay. You need to take that time to grieve, and you need to take that time for yourself, because, if you can't get better, or if you can't get through this, like you're never going to be able to fully process it, and it's just going to keep coming up and coming up and coming up. And she also prepared me too, just for that first year. I mean, that first year is really tough. It's a lot of firsts without that person.
mm,
um, and I think that's the weird thing too about grief is you could be fine, and then I feel like using this word is always like it's I use this unironically. um like something could happen and I'd be so triggered. I could hear a song and immediately just start bawling. Um,
mm,
or, I remember waking up on Thanksgiving, and that was always my dad's, favorite holiday. That was always my biggest holiday with him. And I remember just waking up, and the person I was with at the time, I I just kind of looked at them, and I just started bawling, like just crying, and I couldn't stop. And it wasn't even because I was actively thinking about it. It's just because I was like, oh, yeah, it's Thanksgiving. And then
yeah,
that was it. But she really helped me prepare for things like that. She said, again, the firsts are going to be hard. Um, and just know that like you're going to get through it. And another thing too that she really taught me was when you, and I think this goes for anything too, when you feel like you need to cry or you need to take that moment, as long as it's appropriate, you need to take that moment to just like let it out, like let whatever you're feeling out. Um, because if you don't, you're just going to bottle it up and bottle it up. And down the line, like it's just going to be worse. And I think going to her and talking through a lot of those things um, really helped me. And I think that there's members of my family who didn't do the same thing, who are still processing my dad's death even years later. You know, I
Yeah.
think it hits me still, but I definitely am at a place where I feel comfortable with it. But yeah, it is it's one of those things where it's tricky. But to go back to what you're saying, I think it is important to reach out for help, like when you feel that you need it, especially because it's, I mean, it takes effort to reach out for help too, right? You know, sometimes you don't want to do that effort, you know, even just
Yeah.
going to therapy, you're like, man, I got to take, you know, a certain amount of time out of my week each week or however many times you go and talk to someone. But I think in the long run, it really helps. Or getting advice from someone else. They might not have the exact, you know, they might have not have the exact perspective of the exact same situation you're going through. But I think it is important to take advice when you can, um, because with experiences, I mean, comes wisdom, and I think you know that can be really helpful.
Yeah. I think I think why those firsts, why they're so tough. I'll kind of, this is a like a little analogy that I kind of thought of the other day as I got to a certain point recently in like my healing process with um, the person that I used to be seeing was people always say like you spent all this time with this person and you're building something up, right? And like your case with your father, like you know you built up this relationship with him, and I prefer to kind of make it instead of like building like this, like I don't know, in my head when I hear that it's like a pyramid or a building or something like that. When someone you
Hmm.
build something up, so it's more like a tree. Like you're growing with this person, and then when when you lose someone, whether it's a family member, a partner, a pet, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Something that you cherished. Um, it's like that tree that was growing gets ripped out of the ground, right? And when you rip something out of the ground's not flat, right? There's this whole massive hole in the ground, right? That you so desperately want to fill. And the problem is we can never fill it the exact same way, right? We can never, when someone passes, we can't get your dad back. And a lot of times, like, we try to fill it with the exact same thing that it used to be, but that's not there anymore. Or we also know that as well, like, hey, we did this before. In the end, um, it didn't grow into what we wanted to. So why am I
Hmm.
trying to plant with the same soil for the same outcome that I know is just not good for me? Or and so we have to fill that hole with other things, right? That's why I stay busy. That's
Yeah.
why you have to have something to look forward to so that you could fill that hole, plant it with different soil, and then hopefully it grows into something else that again doesn't take away from what used to be there. And I don't like to use the word replace, right? I don't, um, but just fills yourself back up.
Yeah.
And um, that was like tough for me, like more recently of just like, because like you said, you didn't want to use the word comfortable, right? Getting comfortable with the fact that your dad passed. I think that's because there's like this sense that like, oh, if you're no longer grieving, if you're no longer sad about it, then it's no longer important. It no
Right.
longer was meaningful. And that's just not true, right? It's just not true. The fact of the matter is, coming to terms with it just means exactly that. And um, you can be sad about You can stay sad about it if you want. Like you said, you have family members that are still grieving after 3 years. Um, but it's more of the kind of like we were saying earlier, like there are people at whatever point in your life that they were supposed to be in your life, they are. Um, and they'll always be like that important part in your life, you know.
Hmm.
Um, if you want to call that ending, finding a silver lining and all of that.
Yeah.
And I think we all, that's the thing, is like you try so hard to find that silver lining, like what good, can I get out of this? What lesson was there, if you will?
Hmm.
Um, yeah. I know, like a lot of times when I do these, it almost is like I feel like I'm asking 20 questions and just interviewing people. I mean, the great thing about doing this with you is like I've already had I've been fortunate enough to hear kind of your story, so it's nice to hear it again, kind of how you've gone through it. I don't really get a chance, and you might not have any, but like I always kind of abruptly end things, like just when we hit a certain point in time. But is there anything like you want to make sure like we talk about, or any questions, like for me, or just things that have been on your mind as we talked about it, that we either skipped over or didn't get a chance to kind of go deeper into?
Yeah, no, I think we hit on a lot of like really important points. And um, I think kind of just like to summarize everything that, we talked about, I think, tough times, they happen for everyone. Um, Everyone goes through stuff. Um, but I think it's important to remember that um, a lot of things that you're going through are temporary. Um, a lot of things that you go through, other people have experienced. So, again, if you can talk to someone, get help. Uh, don't suffer on your own, because that's rough. And I know a lot of people, they think to themselves, well, I don't want to place that burden on someone else. I can deal with this myself. This is me. I can deal with it. But I think it is important to remember that seeking professional help, if you can, of course, like mental health resources can get really expensive. And I think that's a struggle that
Yeah,
um, a lot of people deal with. And it's something I've dealt with too. Um, but yeah, I think just talking to people and getting other perspectives, and again, even just, talking through your struggles with someone else can be really beneficial to healing and getting through. And um, yeah, I think we had some good talks.
yeah. I mean, that's what, you talk about things to look forward to. That's what this whole podcast is for me. Every
Yeah.
Saturday, I get to look forward to talking to Katie, right?
Right.
And whoever else that might be on the show. So, um, well, then we will, I guess, wrap things up there. Again, thank you for everyone. And I need to start doing this at the beginning of the podcast, but I need to always say, like, if you haven't, please subscribe to the channel. Please leave a comment of anything you want us to talk about. And as always, if you or anyone you know is kind of going through the same stuff that we have, whether it's losing someone you love, struggling through school, dealing with depression and suicide, anxiety, whatever it might be, you're not alone. We're here too. You get, two great examples of people going through it and growing through it. And as always, if you or anyone you know need a friend, you can come meet mine. We'll see you all next Saturday. Thanks, Kate.